And now, from the Marquee Media Studio inside Mark Tank, it's the Mark Haney Show.
And now it is my pleasure to bring on Lisa Thie. She's an expert on AI, but much more than that. She's a very successful business person. She advises companies and so much more. So we're going to get to know her. And I was just talking to her before the show about her website. I looked at her website. I think it's lisathie.com.
It is.
THEE.com. And that website pops. I mean, it stands out. It's got your picture on there and all the different things that you do around your TED Talks and all the different organizations that you help. Impressive.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was such a great referral that I got actually from the entrepreneur community locally. Greg Connolly suggested Launch Titans, and I've had an excellent experience with them.
Amazing. And so we're going to get to know you a little bit, because some of the things in artificial intelligence, we think of that as maybe some abstract thing, but you're actually working with it to help solve real problems. And so you're an expert in that realm. So kind of want to talk broadly about AI, but some of the stuff that you're doing. So maybe just give us a little bit of your background and how you got from point A to here.
Absolutely. So I am an accidental technologist. When I got to college, I remember calling home and saying to my mom, I'm so excited. I picked my major. I'm going to be a social worker.
Oh.
And she said, awesome. I pay for engineering school, but feel free to study whatever you'd like. And at 18, I wasn't sure I wanted to take on that much debt. And so I just kind of went with what my family suggested that I do. And so with that, I've always been looking for ways to improve things for humanity from a social justice perspective through the lens of using technology as a tool. So working at a large multinational tech company for a decade, I got exposed to a lot of cool things that were happening in personalized medicine and different ways that we were able to take just oceans of information and find the signals and the noise to be able to make a difference in somebody's life or in society. And one of the places where I really wanted to see improvement is in the areas of marginalized women and children. I think that flame got ignited in me when I was an IT manager in my late 20s, and I got to travel to 36 countries before the age of 30. And so being a woman that was raised in the US, I've had a lot of opportunity to step into my power and have a voice or a seat at the table, but I recognized that was not something that was common in all the places that I was traveling to. And so I felt this call that there's really no reason to have power unless you democratize it to people that maybe don't have a voice. Yeah. And that started me on my journey for disrupting human trafficking. I think part of that is just family history, being second generation of stateless refugees that came to this country in a really dire situation. I've always been called to advocate for those who maybe are without a voice.
Okay, let me stop you there for a second. You said you have personal experience that people migrating here? Is that what I
my
want to
grandparents.
catch? 'Cause I haven't heard the story.
Yeah, my grandparents came over as stateless refugees. My grandfather from China after living in a refugee camp for a decade after World War II, and my grandmother after being rescued by a Canadian soldier from the concentration camp when the World War II
That's your
ended.
grandparents.
That's my grandparents.
Wow.
And so I've always seen what can happen when good people watch but don't step in. And I wanted to be more of part of the solution than part of the problem. And so I don't really have any history with any kind of abuse with human trafficking or those things, but I did feel like it's something we can do something about. I can relate as a mother watching your child struggle. I can relate as a friend watching your friend make a bad decision that might lead down a path they can't anticipate. I can relate as, a mentor to people that maybe have made one or two bad choices that led them down a path that they are having a hard time unwinding. And so through local work with places like Women's Empowerment, I got really passionate around trying to help people get back on track and earn that dignity of a paycheck. And I think that my work in IT and seeing that, a more global perspective allowed me to kind of widen the aperture and want to do something more to help identify the people that are in need and need just a little bit of opportunity or course correction so that they're not only them, but their children and their grandchildren can have an opportunity to have a flourishing life. And so after seeing it real time in places like Kuala Lumpur, I was in a bar late at night because I was all jet lagged and my time zones were off anyways.
No, that's where I go to too, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, it's not for anything else, Mark. But I remember seeing 2 very young children being trafficked.
Oh my gosh.
Right
you
in
saw
front
it
of
right
me.
in front of you.
In that bar, and it was like a Tuesday night. And what was so shocking to me was that it wasn't a surprise to anyone else there.
And what could you do as a non-citizen, somebody like visiting? Well, you're not in a position of power or authority.
No, not at all. And so what I found was I wasn't able to do something in that moment, but it helped me to carry it forward so that when I did get more advanced in my career, I could go past like maybe buying bracelets that were made by survivors to things like being able to help point this really powerful technology wave of artificial intelligence towards benefiting women and children globally. Because a lot of the things that I learned about this crime, it really does get tied in with cartels. It gets tied in with people that traffic people, typically traffic guns, they traffic drugs, but they traffic humans because it's something you can sell over and over again.
It's so sad. We've had Ashley Bryant on our show, 3 Strands, and I know you're involved in advising on that company, but I'm seeing the disconnect because I want you to bridge this gap for me.
Sure.
How does technology help in this, fight this terrible problem?
Boy, wasn't that a disconnect I was pondering for a few years there as well. So what I found was when I re-entered the tech workplace after having my own children, working again at Intel, I learned that through a documentary they had sponsored that 72% of human trafficking victims in the United States are actually products of our child welfare system. So it's our foster youth, it's our most vulnerable, maybe the families that have had visits from Child Protective Services, things like that. And being a parent of young children at that time, there was just this mama bear instinct in me, like, not on my watch. Like, I know what it takes to try to advocate for my own children. And if there's no one there doing that for you, like, how do you ever get through the gauntlet of all these tender ages where you can get pulled off track?
And what I remember hearing from Ashley and just kind of understanding this is it's less around, at least in America, around swiping kids up and throwing them in the car real quick, like kidnapping, like you might picture kidnapping. There's more coercion and coaxing of this to almost get people to find a new friend. And next thing you know, you're in the midst of some real bad people.
You're spot on, Mark. And that's where the connection to technology comes in, where what I learned through the process of discovering more, working with law enforcement and some of the nonprofits that help to facilitate the communications between the tech companies and the local law enforcement people that recover children from this terrible crime, is that a lot of technology is used. It's those trends of social and mobile and cloud that have allowed us to build online communities. But unfortunately, sometimes when you invite people to a party, you don't know who's actually joining. And so by giving people these powerful tools to connect, some small percentages of those people that are connecting have really bad intentions of connecting with children and forging relationships to manipulate and coerce them. So when I got into the data and learned the scale with which this was happening, not only locally but globally, I thought, my goodness, this is a great problem to point technology at, because what technology is good at is looking at math, looking at repetitive patterns, like that tedious stuff. And when I would job shadow law enforcement, I would see them just scrolling page after page after page, trying to find a match between the advertisement for someone and a missing child's report, for example. And I would look at that from the eyes of kind of the work I did for my day job, which is, process automation and optimization. How can we start to use some of the tools we use for business in order to apply those to the problems of social justice? And so we were able to take a partnership approach with Google and Microsoft and Intel to partner with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children out in Alexandria, Virginia, which is the national reporting location for all child sexual abuse material online. Congress has appointed them to do that work. They facilitate all the reports from all the tech companies like Meta and the big companies that are catching this kind of behavior and getting it to the local law enforcement agencies that can actually go recover those children. When we got involved, it was taking them 30 days to be able to process all the information on a report to get it over to law enforcement. By using artificial intelligence and being able to create something specific for them, we could catch the one time that they screwed up and didn't use a Tor network or the dark web to complete their crime and identify where they were, so that we were sending the reports to the right law enforcement agencies for recovery. So we were able to accelerate that timeline from a 30-day manual process for their analysts down to 24 hours, which freed them up to do so much more of the investigation and writing more thorough reports, so that when law enforcement got involved, they had so much more to go on. And that just sparked that entrepreneurial flame in me that I wanted to keep going.
Do you feel like it does more in terms of like prevention or solving it once it's in the process?
That's a great segue, Mark. What I learned going through that process with them for the 2 years that we deployed that was that, unfortunately, the crime is just doubling every year.
Oh, wow.
And so when I started getting aware of this work back in 2013, they had about 500,000 cases to follow up on each year. By the time that you fast forward to even the pandemic timeframe, there was 21 million cases to follow up on with a team of 25 analysts. You just can't keep adding people to the mix when the growth is that accelerated. And so I wanted to look at ways where we could do something to help on the prevention side. Honestly, the trauma cleanup business is just too hard on my tender little heart to stay in. And so we focused on the 40% of cases where these images are being created by children themselves, because they are making a bad choice maybe with a dating partner or somebody that they think they're talking to, but it's really a catfish situation, to help with that sextortion piece of making sure that kids don't have the ability to make a 30-second decision that can really put them in a very precarious future.
Did you say sextortion?
I did.
That's okay. I hadn't heard that term before, but is that yours, or is that the industry standard term?
It is. So it is a crime where somebody takes an explicit image of someone and then uses it to extort them to send more images and more pervasive images, and it's something that or threatens to maybe release it to their families or other things in order to coerce them into doing other behaviors. So
I'm imagining. Okay, so you mentioned these large organizations, very large, the largest in the world, that have all this data, Google, Meta, others, and getting them to cooperate with law enforcement. It's interesting because we all are concerned about data privacy and those kind of things, and then to get everybody to work together. I just hear, I picture the nightmare associated with getting everybody to work together and not have the wrong information get into the wrong hands and so on.
Yeah, the good news is I didn't have to coordinate any. Those things were already happening. I got to come in and just do a little bit of fine tuning.
Nice.
So, for example, there is a process called the cyber tip report if you identify something illegal content on your platform as a business owner. That's something that's an industry standard, and they were already making those reports. The good news on the privacy front is because they are only matching images of known felonious content, it's really more of a kind of a fingerprint matching system. So the same way that maybe your spam filter would look at hashes and be able to match and say, yep, this is a problem, I'm not going to let this spammer in. That's kind of what they're doing with these images. So it's very lightweight, and it really protects the privacy of the customers. But what happens is once those are reported, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has the purview to actually look into them and follow up with law enforcement.
Well, I love that we're talking about AI and technology being good for society, and so helping solve a horrific problem, which makes it good for society. But if you turn on the news, which I try not to watch too much mainstream media, there's really a lot of questions about, is AI good and where are we going? So as an expert in that realm and this technology, maybe just kind of give us your sense as to where are we at. I think we're in the early innings, or maybe in the beginning of the first inning on AI. Is it good? What's good about it? And what are we worried about? Should we be worried?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I want to start with a simple statement that I stand by. AI is a tool, not a solution. It is not good. It is not bad. It's like asking if a hammer is good in the scenario of building a house or maybe committing a murder.
Okay, yeah.
It's the tool that you use. It is a very powerful tool, and it's a tool that's getting easier and easier to use, and it's getting more democratized. And the days that I was started doing this work back in 2015, the people that had the data to train these models were very few and far between. They were the large cloud providers that have access to lots and lots of training data. Today, with some of the things that have become more available to society with things like OpenAI and their ChatGPT model, what you're finding is that you no longer need to have a lot of money and a lot of technical know-how in order to be able to leverage the output of AI. And I think that's why we're seeing it much more in the public lens. So let me give you an example of how we applied AI in the company that I founded as an entrepreneur in order to try to benefit society, because I think it'll show you a way it can be used for good, but probably a way that it could have been flipped on its side and be used differently. So when we saw that problem of the 40% of that content being identified, being created by children, my thought was, my goodness, we couldn't get in that much trouble if we tried as kids growing up. What would you go to like Walgreens and get your pictures developed? Like there were real world people that would be involved in that.
Come on, that's me.
Yeah. Oh, we're right up there together, Mark. Don't you worry. It just seemed ridiculous to me that like parents and companies even had to be this proactive about this kind of issue. It just wasn't something that was a big problem, going back a couple generations before we had digital natives. Or we managed it through the Postal Service, for example, to identify it. So what we wanted to do was use the AI on the chip of a device to say, hey, wait a minute, this is a naked image. This phone belongs to a child. Do not save. Because as we know, once things get up in the cloud and get distributed, it's virtually impossible to get them back. So in that instance, I think that's a way that AI can be applied to be proactive. And it's really just reinforcing the rules that we have in society into the digital world.
Right. So the machine or the artificial intelligence identifies that the picture of the person, they're not clothed.
Yes.
And it's, humans can't go looking at all that stuff because it's too much information, but the machine can actually identify just based upon characteristics and then stop it.
Yeah, and just say, do not save.
Yeah.
As simple as that. So that's an example of how we were trying to apply it back in 2017, 2018. What we're seeing today is it's expanding to a lot of different areas. I certainly never envisioned during those days when I was still trying to figure out what all this was. And mind you, I had access to some of the best experts in the world on these technologies, and I would sit in rooms with these people trying to solve some of these challenges, and I literally did not think I spoke English. I'm like, the words they're using, I don't understand. The way that they approach it is very new and novel to me. So even having an engineering background, it was really intimidating to be around. But because we were all aligned around wanting to make an impact on the same problem, it allowed us to come together and just bring our skills. I'm much more of a salesperson and a connector than I am a technologist these days. I would not hire me to build you anything at this point in time. But I do speak enough technical lingo to know how to coordinate all the people that can come along on the journey. And so, using data science, using artificial intelligence, it can be really intimidating because they use like math language and statistics language and computer programming kinds of references. But at the end of the day, really what it is you're taking a large amount of data and compute power, understanding based on the labels of the data, what kind of patterns it can pick up in historical information, and then making predictions about the future based on that. And the data sets get so big, it's just not what people can't process at a certain point. Right. And so that's what I try to simplify artificial intelligence to, because just the same way that children learn by practice how to get good at maybe throwing a baseball, for example, that's what's been happening with computers on training these models over the last 20 or 30 years. You're not explicitly saying, go find me, open hand, grasp ball, lift arm, pull back, like you would with traditional software programming. AI is showing examples of, and then we're giving feedback as humans back to the computers about whether they got their guess right or not. And I think when you take it down to just the simple brass tacks of things, it makes it more accessible to more people. And the reason I decided to write a book in this area, and I do a lot of the keynote speaking I do, is because I really want to see more people coming into this field to be leading, because we are all co-creating the world that we want to live in and we want to raise our generations in. And artificial intelligence is just as much about understanding the business or society problem that you're trying to solve with the technology as it is the technology itself.
Yeah, you and I both are involved in helping startups. We do a lot of investing. And right now, we are seeing many companies coming out with AI in some form. They're using AI to really attack these problems. And sometimes it's really like nuanced problems. One of them that we just invested into, I think it's interesting. We have some that are curing disease and doing all this, really big stuff, but something that's kind of big for a guy like me that might be like a sales guy is using a CRM, right? Using our, like a Salesforce or a HubSpot or something like that. And you got to do all that data entry as you talk to a customer, you do a Zoom call. There's all this data entry associated. It's a pain in the butt for somebody who's more of the people person. We invested into a company called 4PM, and the name of the company was derived from kind of that idea that at the end of the day, don't you hate doing all that input? What if it was taken from your Zoom call or your meeting and automatically uploaded into Salesforce? And, all your next call was set, all the different little to-dos associated with being a sales rep go away, and they're automated. And so these little nuanced business things that are very important to some of us may not be the big societal problems, but like making us way more efficient.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I live in a capitalist society. So all the time that I was running these projects on the side, I was doing my day job as a salesperson. So I think we can all say anybody that carries a bag for a living hates having to go in and log into all the systems and put in all the pipeline information. I think we all suffer from that affliction. And those are high cost resources for businesses that have really special, unique talents. And so I think that's a really great example of how AI can be an accelerant in partnership with the human, right? The human's still having the meeting, they're still leading the discussion, but the technology is helping them to accelerate some of that work that has to happen on the back end to bring alignment across the whole organization. And so I think that's the more of where we're going to see AI in the future. So I think a lot of what's talked about in terms of the scary part of AI that we hear about in the news taking over and, being, self-aware and all the things, I'm not too worried about that in my lifetime. Maybe in my children's lifetime. I think in the short run, what we will see is it is something that allows us to have more free time, more discretionary energy for innovation, for creativity, for relationship building, to do the things that are uniquely human, but also be able to do the things that are part of work, because if it was all fun all the time, they wouldn't pay us, right, Mark?
Yeah, so successful busy mom, this is interesting because you're a technologist, successful busy mother, and you're on, I don't know how many, you're on boards of directors, you're on advisory boards, you've got a well-known TED Talk, you've got your own podcast. How do you do it all? Okay, that's a lot.
I don't think that I'm going to win in the how do you do it all argument, Mark. I think you are definitely doing more than I am.
Being a mom is more than anything I've ever contemplated doing in my entire life.
Well, to be fair, first and foremost, I don't do it by myself. My husband is an active participant in this, thank goodness, or we both wouldn't make it. Number two, some days aren't as graceful as others. Try to focus on making sure I get, again, the signals and the noise, right? And that's probably why my brain was more focused on things like that. It's like, why do these things have to take so long? If I could just recover my time doing blah-de-blah-de-blah, then I could be spending more time in my kids' classroom with them or things like that, right? So the answer is I am really getting better in my 40s around boundaries. It's not really a word I use very often.
That means saying no sometimes, right?
Exactly. But I recognize every yes I say to the world is a no I say to myself and my family. And unfortunately, I had to get a little bit hard for me to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
I found myself working on a morphine drip in the hospital after a back injury.
Oh boy.
Because the mission of the work, I was going to South by Southwest in a few weeks, and I was really having a hard time balancing how do I decide whether to push through my pain or accept the pain of others because I'm not moving advancements in the problem to help them faster. And it got me into some unhealthy thinking. So I credit a lot of time invested in me with mentors, sponsors, and therapists to help me understand that I didn't create these problems. They're probably not going to be solved in one human lifetime.
Yeah.
And we all need to just focus on what we can do. So I put building blocks in place intentionally so that I don't need to be everywhere all the time. You know, once you do the TED Talk and it's recorded once, you can send it to people and it's very quick to do.
Yeah.
I do a lot of executive coaching for friends and family on, making that transition from the corporate world into entrepreneurship. Well, I put all of that secret sauce in the book so that I can be like,
Yes.
I'm
It's
just
almost
going
like
to
you
get that
did
to you.
you knocked out a project, you knocked out the book, you knocked out the TED Talk, and so these things live on where they don't take as much of your time.
Yeah, my dream is that it inspires the next generation of innovators to go step out into leadership, whether that be as entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, to go solve whatever they're passionate about. Maybe it's raising the level of economic opportunity in the country that they're from. Maybe it's helping to upskill people into the jobs of the future. I think in this new data economy, we're all going to have to be lifelong learners. I can't really anticipate what the needs are going to be, but I do know the dignity of a paycheck, and I want people to have more opportunity to participate. And I do believe with this wave of innovation, there's going to be more of that. But I think a lot of people opt out before they even try. And I certainly would have. I never dreamed of running my own company. That wasn't in my lexicon growing up in Detroit, Michigan. You got a good union job and maybe you get a lake house.
Yeah.
And
a little bit like growing up in Sacramento, you hope you get a job for the state so you have PERS. And it's like, I hope I get a job with GM so that I've got all the, union benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I got lucky that in my network of people, my co-founder happened to work for Apple. He had heard some of my ideas. He was under an NDA, so he wasn't able to say much back, but our kids went to preschool together. And he wanted to give back to his legacy as well. And so when the iPhone 10 launched, he called me up and said, hey, I'm not under NDA anymore. Let's go really make a dent in this problem. And, when people show up with capital, when they show up with sweat equity, when they show up with passion, sometimes it helps you to rise past your fears. That was definitely my experience. And I hope that I inspire the next generation to at least try it, because if nothing else, you know this from all the impact that you make in our community, Mark, even if your business doesn't succeed in the traditional money measures, the amount that you learn as a street MBA of running a business, I mean, from the first day you go from, whatever your expertise is into like head of law, head of IT, head of HR, head janitor, all the things, right? And so you learn to be agile and nimble on your feet. You learn to think like an owner. And no matter what you do past that, you're going to be a better employee. You're going to be a better leader in your household. There's so many things that come from being uncomfortable. And I think that we all have different things that we're really great at. And if we all focused on our strengths and stepping into leadership in those areas, we'd have a lot more progress for us all.
I agree. Behind me is one of my favorite mantras. I think I stole it from Walt Disney. It's yes if ... So you can't see it on the camera if you're watching this on YouTube, but yes if ... To me, it has two meanings. The first one is kind of something we were talking about a second ago. How do you say no to things? Well, yes if. Does it tie to my building blocks, as you mentioned, or your mission, or whatever you're working to accomplish in your life? You can say yes more often if it ties really well back to that. But also in terms of building a business or creating a life with impact or doing something that gets you out of your comfort zone, anything is possible, right? Anything is possible if you have enough imagination, if you have enough commitment, if you have enough love, and for me, if I bring the right people onto my team to help me make, cover up for all the stuff I suck at.
Oh, success is not a solo sport. There have been a ton of people that have supported my journey along the way, and I hope to be support for others. So you mentioned I'm on boards and this and that and the other. That's why I do that, right? So if I'm an operator, I can focus on solving one problem and be married to it. I feel like in this season of my career, now I can help accelerate multiple entrepreneurs that are solving problems in HR and in helping whatever company they're focused on. Mental health and HR and all sorts of cool projects that people are working on. Distributed IO for the metaverse. I get to be exposed to all these cool leading edge things and help to guide and accelerate and bring in resources. But I'm not, that's like an hour or two of my month. It's not my whole day, every day.
So you're a thought leader. As I mentioned at the beginning, you've got a website that describes your background expertise, the kinds of things that you understand and kind of help the rest of us to understand. But you were also an operator, you're a corporate operator. These transitions can be, interesting to navigate. What, in terms of now, are you in transition or are you like full-time thought leader? Full-time.
I think we're all
helping
in transition all the time, Mark. So the answer is yes and.
Okay.
So I host a podcast and a web series helping people understand AI better for Launch Consulting. I'm their managing director of data and AI. That's kind of my day job that I show up to. As an author.
Are you talking about Launch, Jason Calacanis?
Yes, I am.
I didn't know you were involved with that.
Yeah, I've been there for about 4 years now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of my anchor thing that I do that keeps me current in technology, and I get to work with really cool companies that are solving problems using AI. So some of the signature things I work on are in healthcare, being able to help get more models into clinical settings by reducing bias in their data is an area of expertise. And I worked with UCSF Hospital and Microsoft on a project doing that for Beekeeper AI. Also working with large tech companies on online safety and having a better way to identify when people are violating their terms of service and being able to get their operations teams engaged at the right time. In terms of the podcast and a lot of the speaking are tied back to that.
Yeah.
But since I lead the group, I don't have to do the day in, day out consulting of it. So that leaves that space for the thought leader work.
Yes.
The book was a labor of love. I got really sick with COVID and I was kind of stuck in bed for about a year.
Oh, wow.
And so as a result of that, the ways that I usually manage my stress and manage my emotions weren't very available to me. And so instead of maybe going to the gym or maybe taking a dance class or taking my dog for a walk even, a lot of those things weren't accessible. And so I was kind of defaulted to writing because that's what I could do with the situation that I was in. So I felt like it was an opportunity to at least use the time well. And it helped me really process my emotions and my feelings about becoming a new version of myself. Maybe somebody that couldn't just will through every challenge. My body was keeping score and giving me signals of overworking and burnout. And so as a result, I was able to kind of reignite that in that way. But I think all entrepreneurs have this level of mental health issue, right? Once you solve a problem, you want to jump into the next fire.
But it's interesting because I think I'm kind of curious what we can maybe learn from that. So let's, if it's okay, we'll dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So COVID, in some ways, people don't think about it that much anymore. Okay, that's something that happened. Remember during COVID and, but people get sick. So whether it be COVID or cancer or anything,
autoimmune issues.
You can have these health setbacks that put you in bed for a year. I had no idea about that because you and I have known each other, maybe not very well, but I didn't know that how do you deal with being in bed for a year?
Well, apparently you write a book.
Okay, so
No, just kidding.
Somehow you stay productive.
No. So at a high level, it was a really interesting time because I was working with that hospital at the same time that I was going through my own health journey. So in the daytime, I'm advising for the chief digital transformation officer of one of the world's leading research hospitals, who's a practicing cardiologist, on how to use more data to accelerate some of their research. But in my own life, I've had this mysterious autoimmune disease for 10 years that nobody can get a handle on what it is. And so when I got COVID early in 2020, before anything was available, and you could barely get a test when I got it, it took what was that underlying condition and just 10x'd it. And so, every month it was like a new thing. Like 1 month I had sudden hearing loss, but only in one ear, so they're checking for brain tumors. The next month it's they realize I'm like losing words and I'm getting lost when I'm driving, and realizing that I had some neurological impairment.
What about like getting doctor's appointments and stuff like that? Because people were, it's slower. Everything's slower, right? Because COVID, overwhelmed a lot of the standard stuff, and then they created all these extra processes that, just made it so cumbersome to deal with medical. I mean, I didn't go to the doctor for like 2 years because, what am I going to try to do? Go to the doctor during
I was
COVID?
taking all your appointments, Mark. So, I was working with 11 specialists to cover the range of things that we were trying to manage, because I had long COVID and this autoimmune disease that ultimately we now know what it is. It's called Behçet's disease. But it's basically my immune system was attacking my healthy veins and arteries and creating aneurysms and all sorts of chaos.
Oh my God.
And so it's much better under control now. But, when you have those moments in life where you're not quite sure you're going to be around, it starts to get real clear on what matters to you, what kind of legacy you want to leave. And to me, it's I want to be a great mom and wife to my family, but I also want to be an advocate for those without somebody to advocate for them. And so through writing, through speeches, through building technology with teams, through advising, I hope that I can bring more resources to protect as many people as I can. At heart, I just want to be an advocate. And so, when you have to look at yourself in the mirror and really reevaluate your priorities, I think sometimes it gets really clear what are the balls you can drop that are plastic and they'll bounce back, and what are the glass ones.
So for the hard chargers out there, the entrepreneurs that are, feeling like they have this window of time to, get their next round of funding or get over the hump, if you will, go out of business, right? There's a lot, and there's people that are not entrepreneurs that are just extremely driven people that sometimes don't know how to shut it off as well and don't want to accept their own humanness.
Yes.
What would you say to those people? How do you self-assess for when to shut it down a bit to protect yourself?
Yeah, so I actually put like a dedicated process into my book, because I feel like you usually don't think about reassessing these things till you're on the hairy edge of burnout to begin with. And so that's where the origin of this book came from, was that 90-day process of slowing down, getting out of your head, back into your body, and starting to recognize the signals of what is working for you and what isn't. I think we can all be hard charging and work really, really hard when we're in our flow and we're aligned with the people and the mission that we want to be doing. And that doesn't have to be nonprofit type of work. That can be anything. But if you don't slow down enough to recognize what you're uniquely good at and what energizes you, you're going to be burning a lot of energy on things that just slow you down and do not even get you anywhere closer to where you want to be. And so I had to learn that the hard way. My body shut down on me. That's how I learned that lesson. I wanted to give people a little bit more graceful way to do that. I'm not going to lie, most people that came into my coaching practice or, advising came because of a death in the family, a divorce, a health issue, something happened. And that's why we designed it for 90 days, because it's typically the length of a medical leave.
Okay.
But I think, if you spend the first month just stabilizing yourself,
okay,
being able to even hear your own wisdom and tune out all the noise
of the world. Get to a point where you're getting enough sleep, maybe you're eating better, exercising
walking
a little bit.
Walking outdoors, seeing the tops of the trees.
Get back to basics for a second.
Absolutely. Re-engage in a hobby maybe you had when you were a kid. Something that just is play-driven, like that sparks your creative juices. And then once you get into the second month of the process, it's really about dreaming. It's, who are the people you admire? What are they doing? Like, how does that align with your strengths? Where are the places you have gaps? What do you want to be doing? Not the next job or company, but the one after that. How do you start to fill in the places where you don't have those skills yet? And when you get really clear on your values and what you want to accomplish long term, I think you start to really attract the right kind of people into your sphere. And you don't have to try to be everything to everyone. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I can do math. I don't enjoy it. It's not my shtick. I spent a lot of years working in corporate America doing really math-based jobs because that's what my degree says I'm good at. But as we started this conversation, it's really the people that matter to me at the end. So, being able to get back out of what other people deemed as success and maybe the expectations you're living up to and redefining it on your own terms is the fuel and the fire that allows you to get really clear on your mission. And then by month 2 in the process, you will have your mission defined enough that you can start to plan and socialize it with others. And nobody gets opportunities in a vacuum. I think there's a lot of data out there for jobs or companies that a lot of times it's really your network and who you know that allow you to take those next leaps forward. And being able to, express yourself of what you can bring to the table because you've done the work to really understand yourself, but then also what, where you want to learn and grow. That's where I find that people are willing to open up opportunities to you. I don't think I've been qualified for a single job I've had in the last at least 10 years, if not 15. But when people see something in you that they want to help nurture, and I think that usually comes from building an authentic relationship with someone, not a transactional one. It's really amazing how much you can step into new places. And we are all growing, learning creatures. Nobody is incapable of learning and growth. And so when you can be a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more transparent, I find people really want to take the time to invest in you.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand this framework. So first 30 days, back to basics. Second 30 days is basically figure out what you want to do, what's your vision, what's your mission, some of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Is the third 30 days another segment?
It is. It's a lot of networking, informational interviews, and leveraging your network to get to more loose associations that might have more purview. I really like the Pitbull line, ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money twice. I've definitely seen that play out of mine. So it's a lot of advice seeking from people.
So you're taking action at that step.
Absolutely.
Get out there, get out of bed, get out of the house.
Yes. It's slow down to go fast.
Okay.
I think that's really what it is.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. I remember when I had sold my companies and our business was national. So only 1% of our business was here in Sacramento. And then there was that transition period for what do I want to do with my life? And I had a lot of ideas that sounded really fun, but one of the things that I knew I didn't really want to do that much is I didn't want to travel all over the country for work. Let me travel for fun and that kind of thing. And I want to do something that's fun anyway, but just getting on an airplane, once a week, twice a week, or even once a month to go, do something, to go manage something, it didn't sound that fun. That's why we've been relentlessly local. It's actually turned out to be, I think, in some ways, from a happiness standpoint, a blessing in disguise because we've made a lot of friends here in Sacramento from having a job where I did, worry about more things on a national basis to now, oh, wow, my neighbors, my actual next door neighbors are part of my new community. I love it.
I couldn't agree more. It's that we are social mammals. We are made to be connected together. We can do some of that through distance. I have some dear friends that I don't get to see every day because they live in Texas, for example. And it's nice to be able to maintain that connection. But I think those connections are really hard to build virtually. And so I couldn't agree more. It's actually why I come to a lot of your events. I can tell people are looking like, you're not actively angel investing and you're not actively leading a software company right now. Why are you here? And the answer is because I desire to have that community of like-minded people that will just take a chance and be creative and give it a go. And the benefit we all get of being in it together, I think, is so strong. And I think you've done something unique in our community that is a huge backyard advantage.
Thank you. Lisa, I I appreciate that a lot, but you use the term backyard advantage, and I think for a while, I've been at this for a while trying to get this to happen, right? Yep. And it happens here and it happens there. But now something unique has begun to happen. You're going to speak at GFX. We were talking about that earlier. And at GFX, we're going to be talking about building the backyard advantage. The theme of the event, it's not just innovation and technology and entrepreneurship, although that's at the heart of it. Really, it's centered around the backyard advantage, which is building on a culture of love, right? We all help each other, love the action. How do we help our neighbors to have just a little bit better shot at getting from point A to point B? And those little connections, those little bits of helping people, they add up, and you never know. You mentioned somebody that you met at one of our events previous. It's like you never know, and it's more likely to mature into something super beneficial if they're in your backyard.
I couldn't agree more. So I'm really looking forward to having some time to talk to people about embracing trust and ethics in AI. That'll be my topic for the conversation. The other place I'm looking to contribute is in the panel around career exploration. I think a lot of people are going to be disrupted in the next 5-10 years in terms of what are the skill sets required to be current in the future of work. And so I think helping people to have a little bit of an insight as to where the ball's going down the field. I'll use my ice skating roots as a reference point. Skating to where the puck's going, not where it is going to be one of the huge advantages that Sacramento does have, because we have a wide variety of people in our local community that can pull all the pieces together, that we get a unique view of what it's going to take to thrive 5-10 years out here. And I think that the more that we can share the information that we have and build teams to collaborate and accelerate each other, it's just such a self-fulfilling prophecy that we will all thrive.
Well, let me dive into that a second, because this is really interesting to me. You think about the tedious jobs that we have in pushing paper and, filing, right? Even people are still using paper, but you're just doing these tedious jobs that can be replaced in almost every industry. There are people doing this work that a computer could do for them if it was at our fingertips to just do. And so some of these jobs will be gone. And so is there like a central theme around understanding where your job, if you think you're going to work the next 20 years doing a mundane, I'll call it boring job, where you're kind of doing the similar stuff, analyzing these documents over and over and over and over, when the computer could do a lot of that initial analysis for you, you might want to think about how to do what? Pivot, get involved in, understanding technology. What do you do if I'm in one of those jobs?
I think we all have elements of those jobs in every job that we're in. So I think for people that have a subject matter expertise that requires something that's uniquely human, so that creativity, that connection, that innovation, I think those people are going to learn how to partner with machines a little bit more effectively, and that's going to be the secret sauce of them continuing to develop. I think there are some things that will just be outright automated, and we've seen that trajectory over time. So being able to connect with communities for learning, one of the ones I really like is Women in Data, which is open to women and men.
It's open to men too?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
And it has data literacy cohorts that are allowing people to get more familiar with where those data jobs are going. I think are a great opportunity. Sadie St. Lawrence has done a beautiful job in building that education track and community. I think there's a lot of free training out there. I really liked the AI and generative AI training badges from Google. They're really lightweight, and you don't need to be a technologist to understand some of the terms that are being thrown around in the media, which is really helpful. And then I think that there's always going to be jobs that require a human touch. Like you're not going to probably replace nurses altogether, for example. But, I would have never guessed that the first places we were going to see AI breaking out and really being focused on education. I mean, public sector tends to move a lot slower than other things. So I think we're all going to be a little bit disrupted and a little bit surprised. I mean, if I would have been talking about AI on the soccer sidelines watching my kid play, 3 years ago, it would have blown me away. But now I have school teachers that are talking with each other about how to use it for peer reviewing of other people's essays, or how to help kids that are struggling, and sharing tips and tricks. I think we're all going to be a little bit surprised by where it's applied. Yeah. But I think as long as you keep a lens of curiosity and lifelong learning, you're going to be able to make the changes with it.
It's going to affect all of us. I own a concrete company, and we were talking the other day, it's not going to affect concrete. And then somebody brought up the idea of the robots, which I'm invested into robot companies, and they're run by machines. And it's like, wait, there could be people that finish concrete, machines that move the concrete while it's liquid into the forms, and get it laid out and set to reduce the amount of human, which we have trouble finding enough concrete people anyway. So it's really replacing jobs that a lot of people don't want to do anyway.
And I also see, and this is probably from my Midwest manufacturing roots, I started at General Motors and then worked in industrial automation for about 8 years out here. There are a lot of jobs in manufacturing that require people that have some level of understanding of the technology for automation, for robotics, but not like engineering level, the technicians that keep the stuff running. And, back when I was in that industry, like 10 years ago, we already had multiple billions of dollars of lost productivity because nobody wants to fill those jobs or haven't identified the skill set to do that as a viable option. And so actually that was my first step into entrepreneurship. I was taking the technicians out of the factories and upskilling them into system integrators, because that can be a difference of, like, you're going from like a $10 an hour job to a $30 an hour job. I mean, that could be generational wealth changing for families. And so I think that if you look at what are the ways that we can take the lessons learned from robotic automation and where the needs are, we're going to have the same needs for the professional services jobs that may be a little bit displaced. Yeah. But I don't think we're ever going to not need people. We're going to need people with different skills. And as long as you come along with that data literacy, I think you'll be in high demand.
I love it. So don't be afraid of the automation. Just open up your mind to how you can understand it better and how it might apply to you. Okay, so last question, what did I not ask you that as a thought leader, what thoughts did I not lead you down the path of helping the rest of us?
Boy, we covered so many hearty and meaty topics in such a small amount of time. I'm trying to think if there's anything that we didn't share. It was probably one of the best interviews I've had the experience of having. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think the only thing that I'd like to say to people is, I know sometimes I get into a place where there's so much change happening that it can feel a little bit overwhelming and maybe even a little bit depressing. Like, man, I'm not a puppy anymore, right? I'm an old dog that has to learn new tricks all the time. And I think we can be really hard on ourselves. So I just want to remind everybody that's out there grinding, the difference between the best day and the worst day of an entrepreneur's life can be like, 2 or 3 times a day. And it depends on which phone call you got off last. Yeah. To just remember that you're doing something important and the growth is part of the journey. And, to be kind to yourself in the way that you would be to anybody else. And I think we all struggle doing that for ourselves. And, there is no time wasted when you're learning and growing. And so just give yourself the space to listen to your body, to listen to your instincts, to have a little play in your life to reinvigorate that creativity. Because if you just keep grinding and grinding and grinding, you find at a certain point you're grinding bone and not fat at a certain point. So I just want to give people the space to slow down when they need to. Take it from me. You don't want to be stuck in the hospital to take that time.
I love it. Be kind to yourself the way you would be kind to somebody else. Words of wisdom coming from somebody who is, been one of those people that's forward-leaning, hard-charging, and has lived to sort of tell about it and help the rest of us. So, Lisa, thank you for sharing information. Thanks for all you do for Sacramento startup community, Sacramento entrepreneurial community, and beyond, and for all the big causes that you are helping solve. It's enormously helpful, and to think you're here from Sacramento, our hometown. It's like super, super cool to have you here.
Thank you so much. And for anybody that's interested in learning more about the book, it's available at all the places. Barnes & Noble in Roseville has copies on the shelves in the business section. Please go check it out. Also, Amazon is obviously good, but it would really help to get the message out there. So if yourself, you're looking for a reboot in your career or your life, or even if it's, maybe a spouse, maybe a friend, it's a great gift for the holidays. Give somebody the gift of, reflection and
What's the
helping
name
them
of the
get
book
unstuck.
again?
Go Reboot Your Career in 90 days.
Go Reboot Your Career in 90 days. Go to Barnes & Noble, buy a copy, bring it to GFX. Lisa will be there. I don't know. She might even sign it for you. I'm not going to promise that you would sign a book.
Absolutely, I will.
But, go get yourself a book and bring it in, and you never know. She might sign it.
Yes, absolutely. I will have a table. I will be selling and signing at GFX.
Oh, you're going to be selling books too?
I will be.
Oh, wow. You don't even need to go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Just show up.
No, but I really just think that when you're stuck yourself, it's just really hard to feel like you have one more thing to do to figure out how to get unstuck. And I hope that the book helps accelerate people to start getting some movement so that they can be in the next phase of their future where they're energized and giving back to themselves and their community again.
I love it. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.